there's been a premium for organic grain, and so even with the yield loss or the lower yield, the premium would still mean your profitability is better because we don't have the same costs. Like we don't spend the same amount of money to grow that grain. But for me, I feel that if I can get $15 a bushel for wheat, I could live with that. That's profitable, because on mine I can certainly make more than, no matter how bad the year is, I still get 30 bushels to the acre. So I could get $400, $450 an acre on my wheat, and my costs are low enough that it's profitable. Whereas, say, the guy growing wheat over here, because he's probably spending twice as much or more than that on per acre on inputs, he can't live with $30 an acre or 30 bushels per acre on his. He couldn't do that. He needs to get 50 or 60. I guess I don't do it necessarily because it's more profitable. It's just the only way I would want to do it. I might be able to make more profit in doing other things, but the risk is higher. You can't tell. Just because you see with that grain, they're putting all of the inputs in. They start with that field last fall. They were applying anhydrous ammonia, and what would it cost? $30 an acre or something like that, at least, wasn't it?
Yeah, I think that's what it was.
So they would have spent last fall. They spent $30 an acre on that field, and then in the spring they'll put some more, another $40 or $50 an acre of fertilizers and seeding, and then every time they spray it with a chemical, they put in another $12 to $20 an acre. And so they're putting in all that money. Well, if it doesn't rain, you don't get anything back. If it hails, you don't get anything back. So it's risky. I mean,
whereas your crops are more resilient.
Our soil, because we have a higher organic content, our soil, I think, is more resilient, like more tolerant of lower or higher moisture. Like we manage to get sort of a consistent yield
consistently
of
around
30 to 35 bushels an acre. We don't have a spectacular 50 bushel crop, and we don't end up with a 20 bushel crop. It's just year to year, it pretty much stays constant.
And I guess even if you didn't get anything, you didn't go as much in the hole trying to produce it. So
yeah, last year we didn't have any grain to harvest, but then we didn't put any seed in the ground. Our only expense, we do spend more money on fuel than conventional farmers because we do more cultivation. Like we spend money on fuel.
That's right.
But then they have probably a higher carbon footprint because all of that chemical that they're using is manufactured from, anhydrous ammonia is from natural gas.
The other fertilizers are all oil-based, and we find a lot of farmers around us. Every time there's a problem in the conventional, part of it, if prices go up or whatever, they ask us all kinds of questions about how to do it. They're very interested, but they're scared to take the.
It's costly. Step. The transition is very costly to switch from a conventional farm to organic. First of all, it's a 3-year process just to get certified. And during that 3-year process, you have a reduced yield and you're still selling your grain in the conventional market because it's not certified, right? So you would end up losing yield and still having to sell your crop in the same place. So that's a big risk. And then I have found, because we purchased that land, and it took probably at least 5 to 7 years for the land to become rehabilitated, sort of, because it was farmed conventionally.
Yeah.
And it was very noticeable for me when the first year we bought it, because we were working other land and we're going through and everything looked different. We come out here, we get stuck in the mud like 3 times, and then you kind of go, what's different here? And it's like you notice that the soil doesn't have the organic matter. The water holding capacity is different. The soil doesn't hold the water, but it gets sort of slimy when it's wet. And that takes at least 5 to 7 years before the soil you start recovering the balance in the soil. So during that time, you're not you're less productive, let's say, and you're losing some income.
It seems so unrealistic to do. Like, it's such a big gap, you know, like
Yeah.
financially and all that. Like, what could bridge the gap? Like, what's the next? Is there one small
the
step they
gap
could
is
do?
being bridged right now, I think, because people have become more interested. Like people like you that live in the city that aren't involved in farming are asking. When I first started here in 1990, people didn't seem to care that much. I didn't run into a whole lot of people that really cared whether the oats came from an organic field or not. Hey, if it comes in a bag and it's in a grocery store, it's got to be good because we believe our health inspections are protecting us. But now there's more and more people that want to know where this came from, and I think that it's changed somewhat. And because of that, I think the thing that's changing more is that people value it differently. They're not everybody is buying the cheapest food that they can find. They're looking at it and saying, oh, it's organic, and they'll just buy it, and it may cost you $2 a bag more for that oatmeal that you're buying. I think that when it gets to where people don't ask whether it costs $2 or more, but they're going to say, is this organic? Say yes, okay, we'll buy it. And they'll pay whatever it costs, because of course those things are priced the same way as everything else. They're priced as competitively as they can be. But when consumers stop saying, well, gee, should I buy the cheaper one or should I buy the organic one? And just say, well, I don't want the cheap one because I know it's been sprayed with chemicals, so I'm not going to buy it because I'm not going to feed it to my kids. And when people start doing that, then there'll be a fair price. I don't think any of us want, I don't need $20 a bushel for my wheat. I can make a living at 15, but it jumps around. Right now, it's probably selling at less than 10 or $10 a bushel.
It's at
3
least
years
10.
ago, I sold it for $20 a bushel. And we just need a decent return so we could afford to keep operating.
Keep doing it.
And they'll talk about how they can't afford to buy organic food because it's more expensive. Okay, these are professionals. They're teachers. They're earning a decent salary. I mean, they're not rich, and then the next day they come into school carrying a Tim Hortons coffee, right? And you kind of go like, so yesterday organic food was too expensive for you to buy. Today you go and pay whatever, I don't know, I never bought $3 for a cup of coffee, and that's okay. Like, why don't you, if you're concerned about money, why don't you make your coffee at home for 25 cents a cup? Right? So you're not being consistent, and you're making choices that to me don't make sense, but of course they're living in their own world and they make sense to them.
It's going organic now. I think people, because you'll go into like a generic grocery store now and they'll have their own brand of organics.
Yeah.
And we were talking to another farmer who's like, well, who knows like how organic it actually is or where it's coming from.
Well, my feeling is that industrial organic is no better than industrial conventional. I mean, like if you're going to grow, if you have organic cattle that you raised or you finished in a feed lot, and they manage to meet the standards and you call it organic, I don't think it's better for the planet anyway, is it? I don't think that that's necessarily better, and that's one of the things I think that stuff like Walmart and President's Choice get into is they still want to use the old model, but they want to sell organic food, but it isn't as organic as it should be.
Well, that animal hasn't had a better life either.
Yeah. Plus, how much sense does it make to be importing organic food from China or somewhere? Like, there's more to organic than just not spraying. I mean, one of the big things that organics requires us to do is to be sustainable, and we have to leave a certain amount of what they call wildlife acres. Different certifiers require different ones. core, what does it require? 20% or 15%? So
Yeah.
something like 20% of our land has to be what we'd call eco acres, or so we can't just knock down all the trees and say we're organic, that 100% of our land's organic, but it looks like that, right? We don't do that because we consider the sustainability part.